March 2nd, 2026, Kuwait. The sun is just starting to bake the sand, and the air already smells like jet fuel and cordite. 3 days ago, Operation Epic Fury began, the most massive, coordinated air campaign since Desert Storm. Over 1,000 high-value targets struck across Iran in 72 hours. The world was watching the smoke rise over Tehran. But while every camera was pointed east, something else was happening right over the heads of our allies in Kuwait. 3 American F-15E Strike Eagles were falling out of the sky. And the missiles that brought them down weren't Iranian. To understand how that's even possible, we need to cover 3 things. First, what this aircraft actually is and why it's still considered the king of the sky. Second, who was sitting in those cockpits? And third, exactly what forces converged over Jahra at that specific moment to make this happen. Let's start with the machine. The F-15E Strike Eagle is not just a fighter. It's a 2-seat, dual-role beast that hunts aircraft in the air and destroys targets on the ground with equal effectiveness. The heart of the machine is 2 Pratt & Whitney F100 PW-229 engines. Each one pushes around 29,000 pounds of thrust in full afterburner. Together, that's nearly 60,000 pounds of raw power. Now here's what that means in practice. The thrust-to-weight ratio of a clean Strike Eagle exceeds 1:1. The jet can accelerate while climbing straight up. It can literally outclimb its own weight. There are very few aircraft in the world that can do that. But raw power is only half the story. The Eagle has a massive wing area, around 600 square feet. That gives it low wing loading, which translates to tighter turns, better stability at high angles of attack, and the ability to stay controlled in situations where other jets would stall and tumble. Pilots call it flying at high alpha. When other aircraft are already losing lift, the Eagle is still flying. Now let's talk about the brain. The AN/APG-82 radar is an active electronically scanned array, AESA. It's actually a hybrid system that pairs the processor from the Super Hornets radar with the antenna from the F-15C. The result is a system that can track dozens of airborne targets simultaneously while mapping the ground below in high-resolution synthetic aperture mode. The pilot sees the sky and the earth at the same time. And then there's the survivability suite, EPAWS, the Eagle Passive Active Warning and Survivability System. This replaced the older analog ALQ-135. EPAWS is a digital electronic warfare brain. It geolocates enemy radar emissions with pinpoint accuracy. It can start jamming a radar before it even gets a lock on the jet. A BAE Systems engineer once described it as giving a 4th-generation platform capabilities that are usually reserved for 5th-generation stealth aircraft. But here's the critical limitation, and this is where the story of March 2nd begins. EPAWS listens for radio frequency emissions. It searches for the electronic signatures of enemy radars. But what if the missile coming at you isn't using radar at all? What if it's completely silent and it's just looking for the heat of your engines? We'll come back to that. But first, you need to know who was in those cockpits. These weren't ordinary squadrons flying ordinary hardware. The first unit was the 335th Fighter Squadron, call sign Scud Busters, out of Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in North Carolina. Their combat lineage goes back to World War II, when American volunteers flew for the Royal Air Force before the United States even entered the war. In Korea, they became Meg killers, destroying over 200 enemy aircraft. And in 1991, during Desert Storm, they earned their current nickname, hunting mobile Scud missile launchers through pitch-black Iraqi nights using the 1st-generation Lantern targeting pods. They even made history by destroying a helicopter with a laser-guided bomb, the first time that had ever been done. The second unit was the 494th Fighter Squadron, call sign Panthers, based at RAF Lakenheath in the United Kingdom. Their specialty is exactly what this war required most, destroying drones and cruise missiles at low altitude. And there's one specific story you need to know about the Panthers. October 2024. Iran launches a massive combined drone and missile attack against Israel. Captain Hesser and Major Coffey draw a 6-hour combat air patrol shift. Complete darkness. Hundreds of simultaneous targets. After 45 minutes of intense intercepts, they go Winchester on air-to-air missiles. AIM-120s, gone. Standard procedure at that point is to return to base.
They didn't go back. They dropped to low altitude and started shooting down drones with the 20mm M61 Vulcan cannon. 6,000 rounds per minute, point-blank range. Captain Hesser became the first woman in Air Force history to receive a Silver Star directly for valor in aerial combat. These were not inexperienced crews. These were the best drone hunters on the planet. Now, the night of March 1st, Iran responds to the Day 1 strikes, but not with a coordinated strategy. The command structure has already been decapitated. The supreme leader was killed in the opening minutes of the operation. What's left is a headless snake lashing out with everything it has. 97 ballistic missiles and 283 drones launched simultaneously toward Kuwait, Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. Not a strategic strike, a dying convulsion. Over Kuwait, the air defense network goes to alarm red. Reports of missile impacts near Ali al-Salem airbase, smoke near the U.S. Embassy, the Mina al-Amadi oil refinery, a top Iranian target at maximum threat level. And on the radar screens of the Kuwaiti air defense batteries, the displays look like a blizzard. Now let's talk about IFF, Identification Friend or Foe. Mode 5 is the current NATO standard. The concept is straightforward. A ground radar sends an encrypted interrogation signal. The aircraft responds with a unique cryptographic code. The system identifies it as friendly. Sounds reliable, but there's a condition. The signal has to get through. And that night, the electromagnetic spectrum over Kuwait was being torn apart from multiple directions simultaneously. American EA-18G Growlers were pumping out active jamming to protect strike packages over Iran. Iranian electronic warfare systems were trying to blind the Patriot batteries. Swarms of new American Lucas drones were operating in the same airspace. The IFF Mode 5 handshake was delayed, maybe 1 second, maybe 2. For the Kuwaiti battery operator, that was enough. Here's another factor that mattered. The 3 Strike Eagles were flying in a clean configuration, no external fuel tanks. The reason is purely tactical. Intercepting fast-moving cruise missiles requires maximum thrust-to-weight ratio. Tanks add weight and drag, but without those tanks, the radar cross-section of the jet changes, and an automated tracking algorithm looking at a clean F-15E at low altitude, heading toward the refinery on a profile that matches an inbound cruise missile threat, classified it accordingly. The Kuwaiti battery fired. The missiles it used were short-range air defense systems with passive infrared seekers. They don't emit a radar beam. They don't send any signal at all. They simply look for the heat signature of engine exhaust. Because these missiles are passive, EPAWS had nothing to detect. Because the F-15E lacked a dedicated high-resolution missile approach warning system for infrared threats in that configuration, the crews had no warning. They were flying over what they believed was friendly territory, confident their IFF transponders would keep them safe, while a heat seeker was already tracking them from the desert floor below. The vertical tails were shredded by the blast. The jets entered flat spins. That's the aerodynamic condition where the wings are no longer generating lift, and the nose yaws uncontrollably. In an unrecoverable flat spin at low altitude, you have seconds. The Ace's 2 ejection seats did exactly what they were designed to do. In fractions of a second, explosive bolts blew the canopies. Solid fuel rocket motors fired and propelled each crew member clear of the burning airframe. Parachutes deployed automatically. Witnesses on the ground saw 6 parachutes open just before the jets hit the sand. One female aviator landed among local civilians who initially believed she was an enemy combatant. The Kuwaiti Ministry of Defense coordinated a rapid search and rescue response. All 6 crew members were recovered by vehicle and transported to Ali al-Salem.
condition stable.
And then there's the F-47, the replacement for the F-22 Raptor, designed not for short-range European dogfights, but for the Pacific theater, where distances are measured in thousands of miles. The concept is that the F-47 acts as a quarterback, staying at safe standoff range while directing swarms of collaborative combat aircraft, fighter-sized drones, directly into the teeth of enemy air defenses. And here is the question that the Al-Jahra tragedy forces us to answer. If we cannot reliably identify a manned-friendly F-15E in a saturated electromagnetic environment, how are we going to manage swarms of autonomous drones? That question is already rewriting the development roadmap for unmanned IFS systems across every branch of the U.S. military. The immediate response is already underway. The Air Force is on an emergency timeline to install updated missile approach warning systems on every Strike Eagle in the AOR. IFF Mode 5 protocols are being rewritten to handle saturation scenarios. Coordination procedures between American air crews and Allied ground-based air defense commands have been completely overhauled. The 335th and 494th are already back in the sky. They're mourning 3 airframes, but they're grateful for 6 living crew members. The lessons of Al-Jahra will be taught in flight schools for the next 50 years, because the fog of war is itself a weapon, and right now our adversaries are learning to use it against us without ever pulling a trigger themselves. Operation Epic Fury continues. A decapitated Iran is still dangerous, and for the pilots flying over the Persian Gulf tonight, the most dangerous part of the mission might be the allies they flew here to defend.